Well, hello and welcome back to this Sunday evening. We're not even doing it on a Monday night tonight. We're doing it on a nice start of our week, end of our weekend, good little hangout. It's going to be just me and a guest and a couple of you. And that's the fun part. We're going to talk about some great stuff tonight because we have a lot to talk about leading into this week. And there's some questions, there's some things happening, there's some cool events happening that you should know about. There's some amazing services you should know about and what other creators are up to endeavoring with their entrepreneurial mindset. Ooh, I got that. But I'm so hyped to talk and bring on my guest that I've been hanging out for weeks, Joel Rodriguez of Metal Ninja Studios. Hello, Joel. How are you, my dude?
I'm doing great, Brandon. Thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this call for a while. So yeah, I'm excited to be here.
I'm super hyped. We hang out, we talk in a few meetings, we're organizing some stuff, we're working together on some things and whatnot. But having a conversation like this is so much more intimate and more personal at the same time. So we really get to like put aside all the work and the projects and kind of just focus in on, so what do you do? And speaking of which, tell me about Metal Ninja Studios and how that came about.
Yeah, so Metal Ninja Studios, we're a full service comic book production company. The way I like to explain it is people can come to us with chicken scratch on a napkin. 6 months later, they have a completed comic, completely done for them. That's our flagship service, Concept to Comic. We're also launching an academy, basically an educational platform to teach the up and coming creator, the next generation, not only how to make comics, but also how to make money making comics. I have a business background, got into comics as a passion. I love the medium. And just over time, I saw a need for people a lot of barriers to entry to get into this industry. And I've made it my mission to break down as many of those barriers as I can.
I love that. And so you having a background in business, what caught your attention first? Like a business aspect, or were you always like passionate about the comic book medium in general? Like how did those two worlds collide and make sense for you?
So it's funny because I've always been kind of flirting with the creative industry. I spent 2 years, my first 2 years in college. I was a guitar performance major. That's that's actually where the metal comes from in Metal Ninja Studios. So I spent 2 years as a guitar performance major. Decided I was going to propose to my then girlfriend, now wife, and said I should probably do something that's a bit more stable. Uh, and made the pivot over to business, got a degree in finance, and got my first couple of jobs in finance and realized I hated it. I was not at all fulfilled. I mean, it got some decent jobs, so it wasn't like I was hurting, but it wasn't me. So when I was little, I'd always loved comics. It was always a passion of mine. I love the medium ever since I read Spawn #1. Spawn #1 was the first time I looked at comics as an art form as opposed to just a fun thing to read. And then as I'm sitting in the office doing accounting, I decided, you know what? I'm going to try and figure out how to do comics just for fun. And it started as a hobby. And in the past 7 years, it's ballooned way past that.
And so 7 years, what have you done in those 7 years with Metal Ninja? Because that's a hard thing to come about with just finding a team to make a comic in general, but to find a way to turn a business into making comics through other creators. Now that's interesting. How did that happen over the span of those 7 years?
A lot of trial and error. Uh, Basically, what I'm doing now is building the company that I wish existed 7 years ago, because I got in as a writer and I did exactly what I tell people to do now is start small. Started with a 4-page anthology that I was writing. It got denied, so I turned it into a mini anthology series called the Dust County Chronicles. I learned how to letter because of making that book, realized that graphic design was actually going to be my art form, so to speak, because I can't draw at all. I've always wanted to, but I can't. Graphic design was a good way for me to scratch that itch, and lettering is an extension of graphic design, so those two kind of go hand in hand. And then I found myself freelancing, just word of mouth. People ask me who lettered my comic. I said I did. And then one thing led to another. And in the past 7 years, what started as me doing a 4-page short story evolved into us helping over 70 different Kickstarters in various capacities, from lettering all the way up to full project management. We've helped and had a hand in bringing over, I would say at this point, over 300 to 400 books to market. And that includes variant covers and just the physical books themselves. We've had 8 different projects brought to market with concept to comic through various iterations, as well as our debut, a few of our debuts that have happened at the most recent Baltimore Comic-Con. But yeah, I spent a stint as head of design for Scout Comics, and then expanded the company to bring on our various design team, our writers, our editors, everyone that we have currently helping us now. And yeah, it's been a crazy journey and a lot of trial and error trying to figure out exactly what I wanted this company to be. And I believe truly that we're on the right path now.
Oh man. And how do you say now? Like, is it just because of what you've kind of gained over the last 7 years? You have the most clearest direction? Do you have a plan that you feel like is accessible to creators, but also a way to scale and kind of grow Metal Ninja at the same time? Because I'm sure that's somewhat of a barrier, is figuring out how to come up with just the supplemental material to either hire you guys or to like get the concept rolling and seeing to finish, completion, going with a creator maybe that doesn't agree with the angle you've gone with on the book. Like, what kind of encounters like that have you worked through over the last couple of years?
So when I say now, I'm more so referring to the execution on a daily basis, because I've known for years that I wanted to build an infrastructure that would help creators tell their story, make it easier, whether it's someone who doesn't necessarily have the time or the interest in learning how to make comics, but they still want to tell their story in comics. That's where our Done For You service comes into play. But for up and coming creators who want to do it themselves, just like I did, that's where the Concept to Comic Academy comes into play. They can learn how to do it, and more importantly, learn how to make money. And one of the biggest things, going back to your second question, one of the biggest hurdles I have with working with new creators and people new to the medium is finding the balance between the story they want to tell and being faithful and true to that story, while helping guide them along what's possible and within the medium. And that is both a positive and a negative, because there may be things that they want to do within the medium that they can't do. For example, have 2 actions in 1 panel. It doesn't work. But then there are things that they may not consider as a possibility that is possible within comics. For example, comics is the only medium where you can hear 2 streams of consciousness or more at the same time through captions and through thought balloons and all of that. It can't happen in any other medium. So being able to balance what's possible as well as what they want has been one of an interesting challenge over time as we've been building out the processes.
Yeah, I can imagine with that too. It's especially when you're going with like a 1-sentence pitch sometimes and trying to ride that out. Is that like a lot of filtration within who even gets onboarded or who gets like the complete services of Metal? Is just like how you can literally collaborate with some people? Because I'm sure there's like visionaries, and I think of filmmakers especially in this realm. No offense to filmmakers, but it is like a stiffer network I've seen with that type of thing, where they try to like bring an IP to life to do something else with it. Are those some of like the main things you've encountered, or how many people just have a burning passion for comics and just can't figure it out and like go with Metal Ninja to see this into completion and fulfillment?
Both. We don't filter based off of how established of a story or how well of a storyteller you are. To be honest, Concept to Comic is a very premier service, and it's priced accordingly. So with that, our pricing filters out a lot of the people who aren't willing to commit. And what that does is it means that everyone that comes to us, they trust the fact that we're the professionals and we know what we're doing. We have the track record to show for it. And with that, by coming to us and trusting what we say, we can also guarantee that we have their best interests in heart and we are stewards for their story, not trying to tell our story in their world. So because of that, it, even down to the pricing, it's built out in a way to where it builds trust with our clients, so that when we have those conversations of, this is something that is really awesome, we want to see it, here's how we recommend doing it in this medium, they're more inclined to listen to what we have to say, because they know that from the ground up, we're working in their best interest. And the first stage of concept to comic is called calibration. And with that, we spend 1 month entirely just making sure that the writing team has a deep and thorough understanding of the story they're trying to tell. So if they give us a completed novel, that means our team is reading through the entire novel from start to finish and then asking questions, making sure we understand it. If they give us 2 sentences, we're going back and forth in different conversations, making sure that we have a thorough understanding of, this is exactly what you want to tell in those 2 sentences. And for example, a client came to us with a 2-sentence pitch about a political satire book he wanted to do. And through our process, 84 days later, he had a completed book.
I love that. That's so cool. That's epic. I mean, it's one of those things. I think it's such a brilliant way to help the creation process move forward. You know what I mean? There's tons of reasons and tons of excuses not to make comics, but when you have a service like this that's available for you, and you can work with you in like that pricing realm and make this come to life, like that's a dream come true. Like it's about accessibility, and now you've created a new route for people to find a way to make comics. And so actually, and this is a cool question that just popped up from Roman. How do you find clients for top tier service? So yeah, I mean, in terms of like scouting clients, bringing in people in the market, how do you kind of bring about some of your newer clients? How do you kind of convince current comic creators to utilize your services as well?
Well, concept to comic is specifically built for people outside of the industry.
Okay.
So, for example, yourself, you're a comic creator. You already know what you're doing. You're not going to come to us for concept to comic because you're in it for the passion of making comics. But let's say there's a successful novelist who has 7 novels and wants to expand into multimedia. They can either pitch out that novel to producers and expect them to read 7 novels worth of prose, or they can take the first step, move into comics, and expand that way. I use that specific scenario because one of our case studies is just that, a novelist who came to us. And this is by far my favorite story to tell because it reiterated exactly why I do what I do. And his name is Charlie Rose. He is a novelist who writes a book called Dragon Era, and book series called Dragon Era, The Dark One Chronicles. And we're currently working on issue number 2 of his adaptation. Issue number 1, I met Charlie at MegaCon this year. So 2025, that would have been February or March, give or take. To circle back to the question a little bit, it's a long process of talking to people, seeing if it's right for them, because it's such a top tier service or high tier premium service. I don't want anyone to invest with us until they're comfortable with it. So this isn't something where I'm going to put up a Facebook ad and you're going to buy it directly from our website. We have a consultation process, and it's a lot of back and forth to make sure that it's a good fit for you and you're confident in investing with Metal Ninja Studios. So Charlie, for example, signed on board, and within the same year, he debuted his comic at Baltimore Comic-Con and was able to sign his comic at our booth. And with that, he told me that we breathed new life into the world that he was building. And that almost broke me in the middle of the crowd, in the middle of Baltimore Comic-Con, because that's what I want to do. I want to help people get into comics without all of the stress that all of us have felt getting into it. And then for the comic creators, going back to your question, with the comic creators, I want to be able to help them too, because I was a comic creator wanting to get into the industry. I didn't want to get in and then build something for someone outside of the industry exclusively. So while Concept to Comic as a service helps people outside the industry get in and expand the industry overall, I still wanted to benefit this industry that I love. So that's why we built the Concept to Comic Academy, which is the educational platform I mentioned, because that way we're starting with the Capital of Comics podcast, which is a masterclass podcast. And every week I'm going to be doing live recordings for members of the Academy, where they get direct access to not only industry experts within the industry, but I'm bringing in people from outside of the industry to talk about different perspectives. For example, we have the owner of a video production company that does corporate level video production. Like, he does internal production for all of ADP, which is one of the biggest payroll players in the country, like Fortune 500 level. He's coming, and members of the Academy will be able to ask questions of him directly to figure out, okay, video production, what's the important parts of how do you do specific things? Those questions they now have direct access to. So all of that comes down to lowering those barriers to entry. And then over time, we're going to be adding professionally designed and produced courses on both the creative and business sides of comics.
Ooh. Oh man, that's so much too. I mean, that Academy one is so interesting because I feel like, even with this show, the whole point is to share secrets and to get people to understand, like, the ups and downs of making comics, and just, added tips and just crowdfunding advice, like letting people know that they're not alone in what they're doing. And even from Spilled Ink, it's letting people, like, we're all confused, we're all figuring it out, we all make mistakes, like, and all that type of stuff. But your show is giving such that great industry insight that goes beyond comics. And I think that's the great mindset about Metal Ninjas, that you're going beyond that just the center field that we kind of all live in. I feel like even Apollo City Comics has had its most success when we go beyond just our standard demographic of comic book collectors and people who visit shows. Like, when we do the stoner festivals and political stuff, like, we flourish with that stuff because there's an entire market that, we're the only ones there with that. And so by bringing education to, different, literally markets, so we can explore, so we can discover them, to find little side gigs that kind of also bleed into what we do here. I mean, even for what I do, I work at a printing company, like, and I'm in the comics industry, and it made sense to find the printer that's printing my comic to work in that, and that's being in the industry. So you're kind of giving different levels and insight for people to kind of give another guiding path, because being a full-time artist or being a full-time writer nearly feels impossible now. You have to have a lot of gigs, have a lot of connections, and be very linked up. But you're giving, like, different, ways to think as a creator, like to seek other avenues out that still benefit your craft.
I think that's, if there's one thing that people take away from the Masterclass podcast or the Academy overall, it's a different way to think, and a different mindset, because people can charge whatever they want as long as they're able to set themselves apart. And comics as a whole are very commoditized in the fact that letterers, for example, I default to this because that was how I got started in freelance, was as a letterer. Letterers haven't been able to raise their rates collectively for over 50 years. And the main reason for that is because it's commoditized, to where if one person tries to raise the rate, since they're all doing essentially the same thing, they'll just go to someone else who charges cheaper. So at that point, you're competing on price instead of setting things apart. So when we expanded the studio, the first question that I asked is, how do I set myself apart? I looked at lettering studios and I said, okay, they're still doing the exact same thing. So what can Metal Ninja Studios do that no one else is doing? That built out into what it is today. And that mindset, the business mindset, is something that is severely lacking within comics, not at the fault of the creators, but business and creativity are on different ends of a spectrum that creatives tend to shy away from any conversation that involves money. It gets uncomfortable. It gets very, um, there's a subconscious need to pull away. But those questions and those conversations are very specifically tied to what you need to do in order to be successful with it. And that's what I'm really hoping to showcase with the Capital of Comics podcast. And that's actually where the name of the podcast comes from. The capital of comics, the money related to comics. And then there's also the long-term vision of it, where I want Metal Ninja Studios to be the capital of comics. Whereas when people think about independent comics, whether it's how to make them or how to get them made, they think of Metal Ninja Studios. So fun play on words there. But what I found is if comic creators within the industry are trying to teach other comic creators within the industry how to think, they're going to think within the industry. That's why, while I'm bringing in industry professionals such as yourself, Dan is going to be a guest. I have a few marketers from within the industry that are going to be guests on the podcast. I'm very specifically bringing people from outside that are very experienced in their own niches, to the point where when I approach them, I have to tell them this is how your specific niche will work with my audience, because even these people aren't thinking about, okay, how does this relate to comics? So I'm acting as the bridge to combine these different mindsets in a way that I think will benefit everyone. For example, one of the guests that we have booked for, I believe, February, he is the head of he's the owner of an executive recruitment company. So a big part of comics is how do you recruit teams? How do you build teams? And how do you manage teams? Let's find out from someone who does it on the executive level.
Oh man, that's so cool. I mean, that's a big thing I learned from just running a publication imprint was like I realized I couldn't do everything by myself. So I needed a team. And you have to kind of discover and fall back on stuff you learned from jobs and retail jobs you thought you were just trying to get through the day, and actually apply it to like your every single comic creator. And you're completely right. I've always said this. We're all entrepreneurs. We're all running our own business. We're all, when we do a con and set up a table, that's your pop-up shop. That's your time to shine. You want your displays to look great. You want to sell and push your product. There's so many things you want to do. But it's hard to actually be like, oh, I'm more than just a writer. I'm more than just an artist. And you have to do so much more to make it in comics than just write and draw, which is the hardest, toughest thing for all of us to get over and to actually understand. Because I give away a lot of stuff for free. I won't even lie, even on my part. I probably give a book away for like an entire year before I really start charging, and being stiff on like I'm going to charge for every transaction I move this book. So what do you think are some of the main like mistakes that indie creators make when it comes to running their business, to actually, making some sort of profit, to actually having success with that field and realm of the creative industry?
I think for me, the biggest mistake that I've seen creators make, and I made this myself, is looking at the comics as the end result and the final goal. Even if there was a fantastic book that I read called Built to Sell. And the whole point of the book is, if you're building a company, you build the company like you're going to sell the company, even if you're never going to, because there are certain ways that you think if you go into it with that framework. So if I take that and extrapolate it into comics, the biggest mistake that creators make, in my opinion, is they build their comic as if the comic is the end result, and they build their business around the end result. For example, Metal Ninja Studios, our service is what we're trying to sell, not the comics, which means our prime marketing material is comics. You saw our booth in Baltimore. We had all of these comics laid out. We sell them for $15 a piece. And if anyone's interested, I just give them a comic. And the ability to separate yourself from the book or from the comic to the point where you can charge more for it, you can give them away willy-nilly, it becomes a lot harder if that comic is your main thing. Because if the comic is your end result, then every single issue you're going to be looking at it in a silo. So what do I need to do to get profitable with this book? What do I need to do to get profitable with this book? What do I need to do to get profitable with this book? Just to put things into perspective, with Concept to Comic, a 5-issue series runs a minimum of $50,000. And that's complete, done for you. And that is a huge price tag. So when I'm talking to people, one of the biggest things that I have to rework is your ultimate goal isn't that comic. Because for a novelist, every single comic that you sell is marketing material for your novel. Every subsequent issue, you are building an audience to where your end result in the comic world is your trade paperback. And with that, by being able to separate the comic from the end result, like one thing, easiest way to look at this for a creative is your end result is either going to be yourself as the artist or your intellectual property, the story you're trying to sell. Because if you tell a story with the mindset of this comic is marketing material for my IP, that means every comic that you put out is building awareness and it becomes a marketing tool. And I like to tell people that comics are the only marketing tool, one of the best marketing tools that you can use that brings in money as well. It's one of the only revenue generating marketing tools. So if you're going to, let's say you want to get a movie made, you can scream to the world about your movie. You can write a screenplay and pitch the screenplay, but then you just wait. You can't do anything with it. You can't sell your screenplay. It just sits there. Whereas if you create a comic, you can scream to the world about this story that you're making. You can take your comic to conventions, sell your comic, make money on the comic, while then pitching the comic. Use the comic as your screenplay to pitch. And if you frame it to where the comic is a stepping stone in building an IP or building yourself as an artist, every comic is a stepping stone in building your reputation as an artist. And with that, by making either yourself or your IP the main thing that you're selling, it kind of decouples you and makes that connection to the comic less personal, which means that you're able to think about it in a much longer time horizon, which opens a world of possibilities. Most people overestimate what they can do in a year, but underestimate what they can do in 10. And by opening that time horizon, by separating yourself from the comic and looking at the comic as a marketing tool as opposed to the end result, the world is your oyster at that point.
So basically you're moving the brand, the title, and not the pages done.
Yep.
And that's where a lot of creators kind of stop, it seems, is that when the book is complete, it's printed, it's in your hand, pages are done. I did it. I created the comic and you kind of push it to some shops, but then you start working on your next project and you're not pushing that one as vigorously as you were. Whereas when you think about pushing the brand and the title, that comic is always in rotation. That comic is always on your forefront and you're always pushing it because you're pushing that, not just that single issue. Is that kind of a good summary of your viewpoint there?
Exactly. One of the biggest critiques about the direct market is that single issue comics have a shelf life of a week, if that. Who says that's the shelf life for your comic? If the direct market is your only goal, and your only goal is to get that comic on comic book shelves, cool, you have a week. But if you look at the comic as a marketing tool and you look at the direct market as one marketing avenue, you can still push it at conventions. You can still push it in the digital spaces. You can push it in every single different realm, and you can reach out to different retailers and get it to them without going through the direct market. By opening it up to being the IP, you take the limitations off. And with that, a lot of what I'm saying isn't new, because most people inherently think, okay, well, yeah, obviously I go to the direct market. Obviously I reach out to stores. Obviously I do all this stuff. It's obvious, yes, but you're much more likely to push it if you know that this is the first step in something bigger. And you're much more likely to talk about it in a positive light and, quite frankly, get any sort of discouragement out of your voice if you're talking about it because you know that something big is coming later, as opposed to, I made a book, I can't get it picked up anywhere. My goal is for this one book to succeed. If anything happens with that one book to where it doesn't hit your expectations, that's going to hit you in your soul, and that's going to come across anytime you talk about it. But if you look at it like it's a marketing tool, and every single thing that you do is one more rung in that marketing ladder, then no matter what happens with one, okay, you just test something else. Maybe the cover didn't work. Let's do a different variant cover, test a new iteration, and test something else there. Let's try this. Let's try this. And you start doing A/B testing like it's marketing, as opposed to, my one comic failed, so now I'm a failure. It's a mindset shift. So a lot of the principles that I'm saying, everyone kind of knows innately once they get into the industry for an extended period of time. But your mindset and how you look at these things and how you approach the industry can make or break your company, really.
Yeah, I think that's a definite thing to go on. And I see that with cons a lot too, where a bad con could just really, just break
Mm-hmm.
someone and just like make it really rough. And I think that's a really easy comparison to put in that same, realm of just like defeat with your book. I mean, just because your book didn't do well at a certain convention or didn't do well at this point in time doesn't mean it's a bad book. A lot of times people just need time to catch up to stuff too. Even if your book sells, somebody may not read it for 5 years, even though they bought it from you at a con or, supported your Kickstarter. Everyone's TBR piles are huge. You know what I mean? So giving it that breathing room, but also, I even think, I always say this, Tyler Creator was saying, he still pushed the same album just as much as he did when it was about to come out a year ago. And he's
Yeah.
like, you have to, like, you have to keep the buzz around it. And especially in this day and age where, three scrolls, three posts later, you totally forgot what you were looking at and wanted and or what you even shared with someone else. It's just right out the like the vacuum tube of social media. So just be in people's faces, like keep pushing that book. And I guarantee that people will jump to your second issue, to your third issue, if you just keep pushing that title and keep making the interest there. Like that's why we don't forget about Star Wars and cool stuff. Like it's just one of those things where it's in our face. You have to put it in our face and make it stick there.
Most people, especially most creatives, and I'm not going to say all, but most of them have some level of introversion. So putting themselves out there like that, it's huge. I get that. I'm the same way. I talk a lot and I seem really confident, but it's just because I've messed up a lot.
Vibes.
But one of the big things is, if you think you're doing enough, you're not. If you think you're doing too much, you're still not doing enough. Because, like you said, people are living 3 seconds at a time once they get on social media. So, with that being said, if you're posting 50 times a day, in your head, everyone is going to see it. In reality, no one's seeing it. You have to keep doing it, and you have to keep being very consistent with it. And funny thing is, if anyone goes to my social media, in particular my personal Instagram, you're going to see a lot more about fitness in the gym than you will about comics. And that's partially intentional. The ninja from Metal Ninja Studios comes with the fact that I do obstacle course racing. But the main reason why I talk about fitness as well as comics, and in some cases more, is because there's a certain level of consistency that you have to get in the gym in order to see any results. And that goes throughout all of life. Like anything that you want to do that is worthwhile is going to be a long road. It's going to be a difficult road. And you have to do reps upon reps upon reps upon reps without seeing any results before you'll finally start seeing stuff. And you basically have to do so much volume that other people think you're crazy. But the good news is it doesn't really matter because other people aren't doing what you're trying to do. So because of that, I mean, the only person who can judge you for what you're doing and if you're doing enough is you. And as long as you get out of your own way, nothing can stop you. And Metal Ninja Studios is a prime example for that. We're nowhere near where I want us to be, but we're going to be. And a big part of that is because I am obnoxiously obsessive when it comes to anything that I want to do. And that's why we were able to grow as big as we have in 7 years. From now, to put this in perspective, I'm a Ringo nominated graphic designer. And that was in 2022. In 2018, I knew nothing about lettering and graphic design. Absolutely nothing. I learned how to do it. A few years later, Ringo nominated. This year, we sponsored the Ringos. And absolutely none of that comes from me being any more skilled than anyone else. I just refuse to stop.
Yeah, no, honestly, and the gym comparisons, like to me, it's the easiest thing to compare it to because you have to, as an artist, as a writer, you have to challenge yourself and you have to embark on new things and you can't be scared of, going in certain directions, being very open. And once I realized that in the gym too, like I stopped doing, I don't know, normal workouts and I started really getting to like Olympic, like barbell stuff because now if I do anything else, I'm just bored. And you kind of want to get that way with like your art and your craft too, is you want to find the direction that continues to challenge you and the one that's going to make you work every time you go towards it versus the one that's like, oh, this is easy. Like I'm barely going to bust a sweat, like in and out. I'm just kind of killing time and I'm here because I need to be here. Like that's not the attitude you want to have, like going to the gym or like creating something. Like if you're
Yeah.
going with something and then you see the small progressions you get from, consistently working on something where it might not, what you were saying with how much you're lifting, it doesn't really matter how much you're lifting, but if you're seeing growth and like changes throughout that and better form and like, a deeper reach in that sense, then you're totally going to see that effect. Like back in, I think maybe 2 years ago, I couldn't do like a squat. Like I would do squats, but then I would only go like, 90 degrees. And now that I go all the way down basically, and I'm all the way up, I'm just like, I'm kind of just realizing I could go further than I've ever been able to and kind of back up, like if I miss a week or two. But like you
Yeah.
could do that with your art too. You could do that with, your writing as well. Sometimes you need that breathing room and also just time to reflect and go back to basics and slow down and focus on that. And the gym's the perfect place to let the world kind of just shut off and slow down, and ignore everything for an hour or so before you go back into the rush of it all too.
Yeah. One of the big things that I tell people is don't be afraid to mess up because that has stopped more dreams than anything else. Have you ever heard the story of the photography professor who split his class? So there's a photography professor, and basically he gives one assignment where at the end of the semester, everyone has to take one picture.
Hmm.
But he splits the class and says, Class A, your responsibility is to take the perfect picture, and you can only take one picture at the end of the semester. The second class, or the second section, you can take as many pictures as you want, but one at the end of the semester is the only one that matters. So the first group, they get very philosophical with it. They dive in, they research everything about it, and they do everything that they can to learn, in theory, how to take the perfect picture. At the end of the second team, they just take pictures of everything, whatever it is. You just take pictures, keep it going, take pictures the entire semester. They get to the end of the semester, and across the board, the best pictures all came from that second group. Because ultimately, it's not about how much you know, it's about how many reps you put in. And those reps are only possible based off of starting and being okay with not being good. Going back to the gym, perfect metaphor. I used to be a lot more fit than I am right now. I broke my toe at the beginning of the year and had to, that put a huge kink in my training. So I'm back on the training circuit, and every single day I post a video of my training. And at the end of the video is a picture of me with my shirt off. I hate it. I very much hate it. But I do it for two reasons. One, it's consistency and showing that every single day, it's not going to look like there's any difference. Mm-hmm. But in 2 years from now, when I look back at those Instagram posts, I'm going to see the difference, and it will be there. And eventually, 2 years from now, I'm hoping that someone stumbles across that feed, sees, hey, this guy that's not very fit is posting these videos and these pictures. Let's see what happens. Oh, 2 years, this is what it turned out. And follow that day by day progression to where every single day, it's not going to look like anything is happening. But just like with those photographers, every single picture that they took, not much changed, but they learned so much just by doing those reps that by the time they got to the end, they took the best pictures.
Yeah. I mean, that's Spilled Ink. That's our live drawing show. Like, I didn't know how to draw. I didn't know what I was doing. So I brought on all my friends, and you guys could watch me draw every single week. And like, even for myself, a lot of the times doing the show, I'm like, I suck. Like, I don't know how I am still doing this like a year and a half into it. But every week we show up and we draw for 2 hours, and I draw various times throughout the week and whatnot too. And typically it's not until around Inktober where I'll look at my notebook from last year and then be like, was there any growth? Have I done, more? And like looking at my growth between last year and this year was insane. Like I didn't realize how much like it made a difference. And like even looking at the first page I was doing in May when we switched the format to the show to now the pages I'm doing, I'm just like, dude, it's just all about just coming back and showing up. And that's the cool thing about the shows is that we're here every week doing it with you. And no matter what, we're going to show up, and it's part of that gym, regime is you have to show up, even if it's just like twice a week, 3 times a week, you go when you can and you put in the effort, and I promise you'll see more results and you'll feel better at the end of it. Like I never regret going to the gym. I always regret not going. That's just you're going to feel that way every single time. You're going to hate it until you're there. I get like that with the show sometimes. Like I'm so over, like I'm in the middle of my day. I'm done. I just want to relax. And it's like, I get here and then I show up and I'm like, it's a blast. And it's like, I always go back to the living room and my girlfriend asks how it was. I was like, it was the greatest podcast we've done yet. It's just been amazing. And so it's part of it. And half the battle for being a creative and getting into the industry is just showing up. Like you just show up, and it's crazy what will happen to you and the opportunities that open up for you as well. And speaking of opportunities, there's a big opportunity that's still fairly open for panels for a virtual con this weekend. You and I actually have partnered with Sierra Nova Comics to make this happen. Tell us a little bit about the virtual con and Metal Ninja Studios' involvement with it too.
Yeah, so this is the 6th year that Sierra Nova Comics has been putting on their virtual convention. It has been 6 years of basically them putting everything together by themselves. This year, they asked for some help. So we hopped on and we're helping out. We, Metal Ninja Studios, are, I think, technically we're the lunchroom sponsors, where basically anyone that attends the convention is going to get free access to the Capital of Comics Academy. And they're all going to get a special preview episode of Capital of Comics, which you're actually going to be on, as well as Dylan. And we're really going to dive into what it takes to launch an event like this and talk about the nitty gritty of how to successfully prepare for and market a launch.
Yeah, and it's been such a fun, virtual con. And I think, we've learned a lot just organizing it and putting it together and figuring out the best avenues to kind of go by when putting on an event like this, because it's something that the community definitely wants. There's a need for it. And there's 12, 20 different ways to do it. It's
Yep.
not, it's virtual cons are very different than in-person cons, I would say, hands down, with just from like finding the space is totally different in a virtual realm. And I think that was a big thing that we've been trying to decide how to already make next year better. I believe we're using StreamYard for this entire panel format that we're doing. And next year we're looking at how to like give people booths and like give interactive rooms and have more communication and networking. But these are like the opportunities that you don't have to leave your house. You don't have to spend $800 that weekend. You don't have to, try to like find bad audio on YouTube from a panel that you missed. So, like, this is all like really cool because it's bringing something to creators that they would have gone if they went to a show. And most of the time when we're at shows, we're tabling and we don't even get
Yep.
to speak on panels, or we miss panels we wanted to watch, and that never
Well,
happens. So this virtual
my
con
my
gets us there.
favorite part of conventions is panels.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
that's my favorite part. And this is 3 days of nothing but panels. And I love it. I'm looking forward to it just to see everyone else talk about everything that's going on in comics. And we've got a lot of great panels planned, both for the creatives as well as for the fans. So it's going to be a fun weekend.
Yeah, and it's gonna be great. It's all Black Friday weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. 8 to 9 hours a day, I believe. I believe it starts at noon every day and goes to about 8, 9 p.m. each day. With just about an hour a panel for people to speak on, people to watch, and then it should be available afterwards as well. But so Metal Ninja Studios, like what I know you're doing the special, just the recording for everyone to join in and to do more with that. How
Yeah.
did you get involved with Sierra Nova? How did you get involved with Dylan and like kind of meet them to make this relationship happen?
That's actually a fun story. So the Sierra Nova Comics podcast was the first podcast that I ever went on in 2019 when Metal Ninja Studios started. And at the beginning of 2025, I realized that I needed to revamp my marketing. So I decided I was going to start going on podcasts again. Greg, Dylan's business partner in Sierra Nova, posted that they were looking for guests. So I thought, hey, sure, why not? So 6 years later, I get back on the podcast, and Dylan and I really start talking. And we're talking business, we're talking marketing, all these different things. And by now, Metal Ninja Studios has expanded way beyond what it was 6 years ago. And Dylan and I kind of hit it off. We start talking, and then he ends up coming on board Metal Ninja Studios as our chief marketing officer. And we laugh about it because both of us had completely forgotten that we knew each other, even though he was among the first people that I talked to in the industry. And we laugh about that to this day.
That's like one of those things too. Like even when I did Apollo Inspired Ink and Spilled Ink and whatnot, and it was just a podcast for years. There were creators on there that I work very closely with nowadays, like Jade Louder. And I was just like, dude, I don't remember doing an interview with you with Apollo, like in 2020, 2021 or 19 or whatever. It's kind of, this network is so big.
Yep.
I feel so bad whenever I just misplace someone completely in my timeline of events. But is this something that you guys are trying to do more of too? Like you sponsored the Ringos, you're sponsoring this con. Is Metal Ninja trying to do more of like sponsoring events and like getting involved in tabling? And so like, and how can people get a hold of you, and what does Metal Ninja offer when they sponsor stuff?
Yeah, so we're definitely getting into more sponsorships. We are anyone who's interested in potentially looking to have Metal Ninja Studios sponsor the event, send us an email at info@metalninjastudios.com. But our big thing is we want to sponsor things that showcase excellence in the craft. When I first got into comics, I was actually kind of ashamed to be called an indie creator because at the time, indie comics was synonymous with low quality.
Hmm.
I want to change that. I love the term indie comic creator, especially as time has progressed, but I do feel like we need to hold ourselves to a standard, because the only way that indie comics are going to overtake the juggernauts that rule the industry is by beating them in terms of quality. That's it. That's the only way. And with that, anything that we sponsor is going to be tied to that message of basically a rising tide raises all ships. So we want to embrace quality and excellence within the industry. So we have a couple sponsorships that we're currently looking at for next year. The Ringos we're probably going to be back there in award ceremonies in particular, because I mean, what better way to showcase excellence than award ceremonies? But yeah, and we're always looking for different opportunities to give back and help the industry, whether that's through of financial means or our design skills, and through the various skills that we have collectively as a team.
And so how can people join your team too? Like, as what you're offering is so grand and it's almost a dream job to a lot of creators, from writers, designers, letterers. Like, are there open gigs with Metal Ninja? Is there a way people can submit their work and become, selected for a certain book or offer their services?
Yeah, so we have everyone that works with us, they're subcontractors other than select people that come into the core team. Um, Mostly with artists, and we also subcontract out lettering, art, editing, all of those things, depending on demand and whether or not the core team is available. Artists 100% are subcontracted and they can join our roster. So our talent roster, this is going to be collectively for all forms. You can email, I believe it's submissions at metalninjastudios.com. I believe that's the email address. Yeah. So with that, the one thing that I will say is we have a very strict vetting process, in the fact that Concept to Comic is on a 6-month timeline. We, as a company, me in particular, the vast majority of what I do is project management, as opposed to the creative side anymore. I got into the industry to make comics, and now I don't make comics. It's how it works.
I feel that. I get that.
But there's a vetting process to make sure that you're up to the quality standards, you're up to the timeline restrictions. There's certain people tend to think that other people in the industry have hard times hitting deadlines. And with that, we do everything that we can to mitigate that, with the understanding that we bring work. And when we bring work, it has to be within the guidelines that we set, because of the fact that anything that happens through Metal Ninja Studios is a representation on indie comics, on you as a creative, as well as on us as a studio. So we basically bridge the gap to where anyone that works with us doesn't have to deal with new creators who have no idea what they're doing. We're the median, and we know what we're doing. We know how to translate between the two. We make your job easier. You make our job easier. Everyone's happy. So basically, if you're interested in any role within Metal Ninja Studios as a subcontractor, you can send an email to submissions with your portfolio. And if we're interested, we'll reach out.
I love that. I mean, it's all about creating opportunities, and a vetting process is still a way to challenge creators and push them and get. And if they really want it, they'll work towards it, and they'll hit those goals and get what you. I'm sure there's people, like, even when we get anthology submissions, like I had actually this last one, I was just fulfilling the horror anthology, and 2 creators in that book have applied for every anthology we've put out before. And this was the first book they've made it in, but it's just like they never gave up. They just kept on pushing themselves and trying to hit those deadlines and trying to hit those pages and try to do the best they can. And they finally fit into one of our books. And it's like, just because you get rejected or, pushed, back a little bit, don't take that as a step back. Take that as like, okay, it's fuel. I now
It,
have goals. Like, use those as goals.
it's part of the process, and that's why I actually love telling the story of how Metal Ninja Studios got started, because it was a 4-page short for an anthology that got rejected. Like, my very first thing in the industry was it got rejected, but that doesn't mean give up. That means it's part of the process. Like,
Yeah.
you have to. I try and get rejected as many times as I can every year. Like, that, my goal is to get rejected, because if I'm getting rejected, it means I'm putting myself out there.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, those rejections, they do weigh on me, obviously.
Yeah.
But that's a big part of what we were talking about earlier, where you have to be willing to put yourself in uncomfortable situations. You have to be willing to train yourself to kind of get comfortable being uncomfortable, because what that does is it means you'll go looking for the no's. And then every time you get a no, you're like, cool, moving on. And now it's not a crippling thing. It's nothing that's going to hold you back or stop you, because you're in complete control of how that affects you. So the more you put yourself in that situation, the more you get the reps that seem to be a repeating topic in this conversation. And as you get those reps, you'll keep progressing, you'll keep pushing, you'll keep pushing. And just because if you don't make the cut initially, keep trying. And that doesn't mean keep sending an email every week with no progress. It means work on your trade, keep improving, keep improving. And one thing that I like to tell people, whether it's in business or in a creative venture, get so good that it's stupid for people to say no.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, I mean, and there's so much good advice that came from this tonight's episode, from business to just knowing how to find faith in yourself and challenge yourself, and just knowing to how to find other like avenues and really just explore them and network and talk to your people. What Metal Ninja's doing by bringing that accessibility and giving some opportunity out there. It's very different and unique in the sense that it sounds like a marketing ploy, but it's not. It's really just to make dreams happen, and it's like almost too good of a dream to come true, and that's why I feel like it's like a marketing play. I'm like, no way does this exist, this is freaking rad. And so I love what you guys are doing, and we'll definitely we'll be working together with CWS on a number of things in the future. But Joel, thank you so much for your time tonight, man. This was a really interesting conversation, and we haven't gotten to dive into Metal Ninja and just really like process everything you have to offer to the community, and also just like along with your services and your knowledge and what you're going to be doing. So I think this next year is going to be super, super exciting for what you're going to be bringing to the table for the indie industry overall, like not even just overall in the industry. So is there anything else you want to shout out, let us know about? We have a couple of links in the episode description here, but please let us know anything else.
Yeah. So the one thing that I forgot to mention is we do also do individual services. So the big thing that we push is concept to comic, but every aspect of concept to comic we do offer as a service. So if anyone's looking for lettering, we do that. Editing, we do that. So if you need help with any aspect of creating a comic, you can come to us. If you need help learning how to make a comic, you can come to us. And if you just want to say screw it and have us make the comic, we can do that too. But one of the big things that I want to talk about here is between now and I believe the cutoff date is Friday. Between now and Friday, if you go to metalninjastudios.com/academy and sign up for the wait list, we are going to be giving away lifetime access to the Concept to Comic Academy for one lucky winner. And the academy itself is going to be $10 a month or $100 for the year. Or if you sign up for the wait list, there's a chance you get lifetime access for free.
Dude, that's sick. I love that. And I love, again, more offerings. You know what I mean? You have to get that attention. And that's a good snag because there's going to be a lot of cool stuff. I'm hyped to be working with you on this and to be appearing on the show. And just, I've learned a lot. I've failed a lot. And 2025 was challenging for Apollo. It was challenging for CWS. And it's crazy what you learn when times get tight. And you come out through it as well. So what you're doing is awesome. I think it's just giving us another avenue to find success, and that's what we all need right now as creators. But Joel, dude, thank you so much. I can't wait to run the virtual con with you this weekend. I can't wait to be in the first part of this academy with you. And I can't wait for this listeners to check out this episode and plus all the other ones we've been doing since this new, like, I guess, season of Inspired Inc. Has been so awesome. So thank you to all of my guests so far. This has just been insane with knowledge and inspiration. And I walk away every week just buzzing after every episode. So thank you to Joel and everyone else who has been on the show so far. We have a special episode with Dan Hills airing this coming week as well. And then we have Alex Segura is coming on the show December 1st. So I'll be there post virtual con with that. So I'm really excited. We have lots of cool stuff heading your guys' way. Joel, you're awesome. And you'll be on the show again soon. And we'll be talking all weekend. So we'll just leave it there. But thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Brandon. This has been an awesome talk.
Dude, so much. And yeah, and please check out the links below. And thanks for hanging, everyone. Y'all have a good night.
Print your comics with Comix Wellspring.